What's going on, guys? It's your boy Andy's Red World. Welcome back to my channel. And in this video, I want to talk about what was it like to date in the 2000s, right? What was it like to date in the 2000s? Like, what's the difference? Because now we're in 2024, going into 2025 and beyond, and we hear from the psychologists, from the economists, we hear from the experts, we hear from everybody, from the mainstream media, that women are going to be single, like 50% of women are going to be single by the year 2030, and like 60% of men are not like having sex or in a relationship, or basically it's a total dating disaster. Like 80% of women are going for the top 20% of men. And yeah, so people are not dating basically. Everybody, there's either a situationship where you're just kind of like seeing each other, but like not taking it seriously and just, doing the thing, but not being in a relationship, right? And and then there's the whole like dating coaches and pickup artists, which honestly, they have become kind of obsolete. Like in a world where like a lot of guys are like giving up on dating, like dating coaches have disappeared. And this is where I come in, because I am a millennial, right? I'm in my 30s, and I've read David D'Angelo's, what was it? David D'Angelo's Double Your Dating. I know about Mystery. I used to watch Mystery's TV show on, was it MTV? I think it was MTV back in the 2000s. I've actually, in the where I used to live, the city where I used to live, I would go out, and I would go out with like a group of friends, and we would all just go and approach girls, right? So back then, especially in the 2010s, there was this movement of guys like getting together and going to approach women, basically learning game, right? And I'll be honest, out of my group of friends, I was not the best one. However, I did get results. Thanks to my friends, I did get results. When I was in college, I used to do like approaches after reading David D'Angelo's book. And I can tell you, dating in the 2000s and dating in the 2010s is very, very, very different from now, because now people are like freaking antisocial. And now we have the whole, I think, like where like girls don't want you to approach them. You can't approach a girl at the gym. You can't approach a girl at work. You can't. It's like it's crazy. It's like people have become antisocial, especially after the pandemic of 2020. So let me give you a view as to how things used to be back in 2010. Back in 2010, in the early 2000s, right? Because those were the ages where I spent my teenage years, in college years, and all that stuff, right? So in the 2000s, when I was a teenager, things were very simple. If a girl, and I guess this is like, well, like feminism was still like rising up, right? But it wasn't very visible. It was not very visible in the media, right? So hear me out. When I was a teenager in the 2000s, dating was very simple. You talk to a girl, you get to know her, she liked you, you like her, boom, there it is. You just go, you just start hanging out, go on a date, you get your first kiss, blah 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 blah. If that didn't work, you got another girlfriend. It was very simple, right? In the 2010s, all right, well, excuse me, but back to the 2000s. I know that nowadays, like, there's a lot of like Gen Z men that they've never even had their first girlfriend. They've never even had their first kiss. They never even held a girl's hand. And yeah, so it's very. I think that if I was a Gen Z now, I think I will be one of those guys that never, not even held a girl's hand. Probably, I think I will be one of those guys. So yeah, so being a teenager back then, it was much better. And I think one of the reasons was because there was, the internet was rising, but it was not, we didn't have social media. And even back then, the social media that we had in the 2000s was MySpace. And And back then in MySpace, this is before Facebook, in MySpace, um, you could talk to girls on the internet, and it was actually pretty easy. It was like I used to like there was this one time when I was young and foolish, I had this girlfriend on MySpace that she was in New Mexico and I was in freaking Connecticut. That was like a, like a childish thing. Um, but now that's basically the norm, meeting girls online. So yeah, things were so different, and now that I look back at it, it was so much better than now. Like people still believe in love. In the 2000s, people still believe in finding love. Okay, like it was still there. I think it was kind of like once we went into the 2010s, that's when I started to notice that something had seriously changed, and like especially here in America, like women had like higher and higher and higher standards, and then all these websites, like all these dating websites started to come up, like eHarmony, Match.com, right? And I remember that, even when I would go out and approach, I would still get some girls' numbers. I would get, I would like make up. I remember one time I made up with some guy's girlfriend. I made up with some guy's girlfriend. Um, So yeah, like things were very, very different back then. Girls were willing to approach you. Girls were willing to approach you, and girls were not creeped out. Okay, they were not creeped out whatsoever about some guy coming up to them and like talking to them, because when I was in college, I used to do approaches. When I was hanging out with my friends, me and my friends would go to the mall and we would approach girls, and nobody was weirded out. As a matter of fact, a lot of girls were like excited. A lot of girls were excited that you were approaching and see, oh, what's this guy gonna do? And it was actually fun to go out and meet people, because you never know what's gonna happen. That was the exciting part. But now we do know what's gonna happen. We're in 2024, going into 2025. We know what's gonna happen. You go up and talk to a girl, she gets so weirded out, probably calls sexual harassment on you, blah 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 blah, right? All this nonsense. And now we got the in the gym, you can't even, talk to girls at the gym. It's crazy. So there are so many things that are just getting in the way of society, because there's no community. Back then, we had community, even in your local town. Whether if it was the nerdy community, whether if it was the goth community, the emo community, all that stuff. Another thing that I realized is that back then, friendships will last much longer, right? Friendships will last much longer. As of now, and now, like Gen Z, for example, a lot of them are alone. They don't have like long lasting friendships like before. Because before you will still like hang out, or you will still talk to the people that you went to with high school. As of now, you barely, you don't even remember the people that you went to high school with. And I'm saying this as a millennial. This is my what I see with Gen Z. This is what I see with in society. And I think it's because of the internet. The internet is kind of like giving us this perception that we have unlimited options, but these unlimited options are basically, making us alone. So in the 2000s and in the early 2010s, um, things were very, very, very different. Now, I will say I started to notice something changing when, I would say, it was around the time that Tinder came out, and it was around the time, got something here, and it was around the time that Donald Trump got elected in 2016. That's when I really, really, really started to see a big change. I started to notice that people were changing. I started to notice that everything was changing. Um, and this is when we started to see like a lot of women's expectations and standards just going up, and it was just, yeah. And around 2016 and beyond, this is when I noticed that it started to happen. And then in 2020, when the pandemic hit, boom, people became like straight up antisocial. It was all about them. It was just I don't know, everybody's in their own little world, their own little bubble, and is nothing has ever been the same ever since. So yeah, that is my perspective. But it was so different. In the in the 2000s, people still believe in love. And then we go into the 2010s. We got the iPhone came out, and then we had every phone had a touch screen on it, and then before you knew it, it's like things just started to change. And I think in the 2010s it wasn't bad. Like I mean, you started to notice things happening, but it wasn't bad. Like I remember, like I read so many pickup artist books, like a whole bunch of dating books, and I can honestly tell you that if I were to apply those strategies today, it would not work, especially when you live in a country like America, especially when you live in like a Western country like the UK, Australia, any first world country. It just wouldn't work. So yeah, this video is about 10 minutes. I'm sorry that it went a little longer than expected, but this is how I view, um, this is my experience with the with dating in America from the 2000s when I was a teenager all the way to the 2010s and now the 2020s. The 2020s, this decade is a shitty decade, man. This is a shitty freaking decade. And I understand why passport bros exist. I understand why men are going their own way. I understand why. And I'm going to talk about some solutions as to how we can go in about solving this. Solutions for men, basically, because we're living in a world that prefers, the vagina, the female, to put it simply. So, yeah, man. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it. If you found this video useful, if you found this video helpful, make sure to comment below. Make sure to like this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell for future notifications. Guys, it's your boy Andy for Andy's Red World. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time.